Welcome, Tangle friends. My name is Annie Reiser, certified Zentangle teacher and certified botanical illustrator. Thanks for joining me today for another of my lunchtime tangles. Today we're going to switch up from an organic tile from last time to a gridded pattern this time. I'm going to show you this beautiful pattern by Zentangle headquarters called Well, spelled W-E-L-L. And it's a gridded pattern, as you can see. So it's really wonderful to use in um, ritual, traditional tangle tiles as a background. And as you can see here, there are so many variations, and this is just not even touching on all of the variations that you can do with well. But we're going to learn these today, and I'm going to start with my Zentangle tile from the zentangle.com and my PN micron pen from Sakura, as well as a 01 micron pen. I have my blending stump called a tortillon to blend my graphite, and my soft graphite pencil. This one is a 3B from Stettler. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to start by making a grid on our tile, and that will begin with corner dots. And I am going to try to make my border pretty straight because this is a grid. Now on this gridded pattern, the grid lines actually are part of the tangle. So we're going to go ahead and ink them. We will ink them out, but I think I'm going to go ahead and pencil them in first just so I have a little bit of a guideline since this is a demo. I have a lot of you out there, of my students that I know are pretty metered, and it's probably going to drive you crazy that I'm doing this freehand. So if you feel like you want to get yourself a ruler to, measure this out and do a more even grid, that's fine. I'm going to do it the Zentangle way. So I'm going to divide each of these squares in half again. And the thing about penciling it in first, you can always correct a little bit when you're putting in your ink lines. So we just keep dividing those 4 squares in half. So now I'm going to get out my PN pen because that will make the gridded lines show up more prominently. Okay, let's just start with this first square. We're going to do the basic well pattern that starts out with just a circle in each of these squares. It's very much like what we do when we do Celtic knot work. Although our circles are usually in pencil because we will usually erase them in Celtic knots. But these we're going to do in ink, and we're going to start with our takeoff and land approach of circling around our center in a clockwise motion and landing in the corner. Circle and land, circle and land. And as you can see here, these 3 are good. This one is a little bit less curved. I would have liked it a little more bowed. But what this is creating is this motion in our pattern, and it reminds me very much of an aperture on a camera, right? So this is the very first step of well, and it can be used actually as a string. So I want to stop here for a minute and show you what I like to do. I love this as a string. That is the division of a tile in pencil where you then fill in each of the sections with the tangle patterns. And so I teach an introductory class called Intro to Zentangle, and I use this often as my string. And you can see how effective it works in a traditional tile. So the next step is we are going to do kind of what is a fragment. This is a fragment and this is a reticula. So if you've already been familiar with that, I've taught some of those in the past. The reticula is basically your grid. It's your the grid that you're going to use to put your fragment in. And it can be in different shapes, but we've got a squared grid, and that's a reticula, and the fragment here is this here. But in the fragment world, if you place a fragment next to another fragment and you mirror it, for example, that will create a different meta pattern. And that's what we're going to do for this one right here. So instead of circling to the right in a clockwise motion, we're going to go to the left into the corner. So always within the particular square that you're working in, you're going to want to keep your direction of your line spin the same. So let's do this again. So here you can see we've got this arc kind of forming that we want to keep in the shape. And on this one, so what do we do down here? We want to keep that arc continuing on for this. So I'm going to turn my tile so that it's easy for me to see and get to when I want to go meet up. In this case, I'm going counterclockwise to the left, circle, circle, take off and land in the corner. And then I'm going to keep this arc the same. So in this case, it's going to go to the clockwise direction. And so you've already got this beautiful meta pattern forming. As you can see, this one's a little bit flat. I should have curved it out a little more, but that's okay. This is Zentangle. By the time we're finished with this, no one's going to notice it. So the next step in this is what Maria does, is she makes these leaf shapes, these petals within the spin. And I like to go from the center out to the corner. That helps me make a more kind of consistent leaf shape. And these can be varied by how much you arc out your petal. And you can see, look what's happening here is another shape. It's another meta pattern. So by mirroring this, you're getting all kinds of other patterns going on, two for the price of one. So what I'm going to also do is we're going to aura this section, this kind of a triangle. Basically, we're just going to aura the line of those petals just to give it a little bit more interest. I'm not sure if the actual well pattern stops here without the aura line. I can't remember, but I just think it's so much more interesting if we have an aura line. And you can see what's happening here. There's this little pattern forming, which is a diamond. And there's all kinds of things that you can do um, to make another variation by filling in that negative space. And we are going to do one of those. One thing I want to show you, because this is in black and white and it's really easy to see, it's something you might want to do at the very end after you've shaded or colored your pattern. But I like to emphasize the motion of the spinning leaves. So I'm going to take that initial line and I'm going to weight it. Just the one side, the one that's spinning out into the corner, okay? And that adds yet another touch of interest. And I'm not going to do it on all of them. I just wanted to show you how much more lively that looks than the ones next to it because of the weighted line. Another thing that you can do, if you'd like, you could add some eyelash strokes in here to give it kind of a self-shaded center. So an eyelash stroke is nothing more than weighting down when you start, pressing hard, and then lifting as you draw a brisk line away from yourself. Or you can pull towards yourself too, but you want to lift to make that kind of eyelash look. So that's, well, one version. Now we're going to do another version. Let's get this down. It's a little bit tricky, that whole concept of mirroring. Well was one that I had a bit of a harder time with because I'm left-handed and I swear to God, I must be dyslexic. So this whole change of direction thing is a little bit daunting for me, but I love this pattern so much I just worked through it. So we're going to do our circles once again. Take your time. And we're going to start with the clockwise swirl. That one's a nice bow there. So here we're going to go counterclockwise. Always keeping that same direction within one square. So here we've got this arc coming out and we want to meet up over here. So we're going to go to the left, always to the left. And then I like to use that arc to guide my lines. Now we're going to the right, and you will see very quickly if you've got the direction wrong. It happens all the time to me, and I'm finally really understanding this pattern. So this is the mirrored fragment again. Let's do our petals once more. Going from the center to the corner. And once again, we're going to do the or line. So you can be mindful here where they meet up. Try to get your aura line to meet up so that you have an actual diamond shape there. Same here. Oops. I like to draw my line towards me. I have a lot more control than if I just push it. So always use those little things to your advantage. It's a little harder for me because I'm always trying to be mindful about letting you see what I'm doing without covering it up with my hand. One more. So now I'm going to make another little pattern within this triangular shape that looks really beautiful. It's no pattern, it's just I made it up, but it just starts with dividing your triangle in half and then making an arc on either side. 1, 2, 1, 2. And they kind of look like a vein on a leaf, or veins on a leaf. So this kind of looks like the top of a leaf. And very important on this is that we're going to make sure that we do an arc. You're not going to do just a straight line because then you won't get the movement that will make this especially beautiful. When we get the meta pattern going, it turns into another flower. But we're not done yet, because even though this is already looking pretty cool, we're going to do one step further. We're going to weight the line, these arced lines, with little triangles at the very tip of those lines, like where they're meeting up with that other line. It's just ever so slight. And if you want to look at it up close, I can show you. Sorry, I'm going off camera. So here would be our line. It's meeting the top of the other line, and we're just making a triangular shape in there and coloring it in. And that's what we're doing with each and every one of these little lines. And look how that makes it almost look like a flower in the center. And by making these vein-like arced lines instead of straight, you're causing another three-dimensional look to happen. They're kind of billowing up and pillowing out. And you can emphasize that when you're shading as well. So I'm not going to finish these two just for time's sake, but that would be another look. So that's the one that looks like this, right? And if you see here, I actually did a little spiral in the center on these because that was another fun look. So I'm going to do that. Little print on. So if you make these even larger, you can really play around with those centers. I did that here. This is just a bijou tile, and I made the center rather large and just did one square, and that way I was able to fill it with a cruffle, and you could fill it with any number of circular tangle patterns. Okay, so there's two variations. Let me look at my tile. Oh, another really pretty variation is also with a petal. Circle. Take your time. I'm going to start with a clockwise motion. The more you restate that center, the more you get the lively line without any effort. This one, we're going to go the opposite to the left, making that long arc. Almost looks like a bird head or an owl. Okay, so this one, we want this arc to continue this way. So I'm going to turn so that's easier for me to understand where I'm going. So I'm going to circle around, but that's the wrong direction because I can see it. I need to circle this way. Stay left into the corner. And then here we have this one. We want to arc to the right. Take off and land. Isn't that so beautiful alone? I mean, there's so many things that you can do with that one. In fact, I think it was Project Pack 11 or 12. Rick does a really beautiful variation. Kind of starts out like that. So now what am I going to do? Now I'm not going to aura. I am going to make my petals. So let's do the petals first. From the center out. Center out. And then instead of doing an aura line like here, I'm just going to follow along. It is kind of an aura. I'm just going to make a line that follows that curve, but I'm going from side to side like this. And I'm just going to fill up that whole space with what is sort of like hatch lines. You can make them closer together if you want them to really look like hatch lines. And I'm going to finish this one like this and show you another variation even within this. So you find that arc. And that way we're emphasizing the swirl, right? So once again, you can emphasize that swirling line by doing your takeoff and land and weighting that. But we can also do the same thing with what we call a sparkle. So I'm just going to make one line first, and then the sparkle goes like this. You start your line, stop, skip, start it again. Start, skip. To make what is a natural built-in highlights. So here we go. Start, skip, start, skip. And then fill in the rest. Solid. So do you see how we're getting little sparkles already without any shading? And you want to skip, you want your sparkle to be where the highlight would actually be happening, which is the highest point where the light would be hitting this pattern. In this case, it's just about in the center. I like to start with a solid line and then do my sparkle and then close it off. So there you can see the difference between no sparkle and a sparkle. Isn't that pretty? And then I want to show you a pattern, and I'm not going, this is another variation. If we do not mirror our fragment, but rather just keep the same direction, we're going to have yet another pattern that's very beautiful. This time I'm not going to ink out these lines, and you'll see why. But we are going to use them as a guide to make our circles in the center. We're going to do our clockwise spin. And this one, we're going to do the same clockwise spin. Rather than meet up with that arc, we're going to go just like we did on this side, right to left, or I mean left to right, clockwise. And aha, you can see already we're getting a different meta pattern. So same thing, all in the same direction, clockwise into the corner. So what we're building here is more like a weave, a basket weave, almost like, these should be meeting up, almost like Huggins or a little bit like Cadent. Very beautiful. So we can really emphasize that weave when we go to shade, which I'm going to show you next. Let's do some shading. I'm going to get my 3B. And on this one, I would just add some graphite on either side of these curved lines because they are what is forming sort of like a bridge or a band that's, we want to emphasize that they're going over and under each other. And you don't need a whole lot of graphite if you have a nice soft pencil because these tiles blend out so nicely. I'm going to just do a vigorous circular motion, not pressing hard at all, to blend. Always, always saving out the center highlights. If you blend too much and you just get a homogeneous gray, then you lose the interest. And you want tonal value change, right? So that's why I also have my trusty kneaded eraser. I know in the Zentangle practice, we say, like in life, there are no erasers. You just take what you put down and go with it, and you work with it. And sometimes the best opportunities come from that. But I use a kneaded eraser to erase dark shading. So let's say I'm not a really good shader and I shaded that all in black, in gray. You don't want to lose your highlights. So I just go back in and lift and even just dab some of this off. And you can always go back in just with your tortillon to get your shading. So you can really think about where's going over and who is coming under the bridge, as you will. But right now, I just wanted to show you a quick and dirty way to shade. On these, this is a really fun one. You can always, on these petals, you can always do the circle and then blend that out. And it makes a little bit like a tufted quilt. For quick shading. Sometimes you have enough on your tortillon that you don't even need to load it. That already looks more three-dimensional. And then what I like to do on these, especially on this particular one, I like to do what we call pillow shading, where I'm just going to take the lines that create the frame and run some graphite down just to show you what's going to happen here. And blend away from the line into the center, but always saving out that highlight. And you can see that this is actually taking on a three-dimensional, almost chiclet type shape or cube. Very pretty as well. So that's another way of shading. Oh, this one, we want to shade this one here. And what I had said, we can always do that circular shade here and blend it out, or just put a little bit on the inside of your leaf shape and on the outside. So it kind of becomes three-dimensional itself. And then on these little kind of almost leaf tops, I like to shade the midrib part and just blend that out, and a little bit in the corners, so that you keep that highlight in the center right here, right? So this area right here should remain light. Oops. Really and truly, sometimes you don't need much graphite at all, just to give it a little bit of three-dimensional look. So there's that one. And on this one, the first one we did, of course, we've got our self-shading here with our hatch lines, which we can accent with the graphite. But I also like to accent this area here, like the whole diamond shape, right? Because when you do that, it almost looks like this is lace and open work, cut lace, where the lacy part is sitting on top, right? And then these become like the holes in the lace. Really pretty. And you're going to take your time and do this right. This is really quick and dirty, but it gives you that idea. You can really kind of see it here, that this is more like a flower sitting on top of a grid that you can look down into the depths. Here's another idea for you. I just did the aura line and I divided it in half and then just blackened in the right side in each case. And that makes these fun little almost butterflies in there. I love these tiles that I painted with Lindy's Magical Shakers, which are actual dies. And they're so wonderful that you can erase on them and they don't lift the color. So look at this. They totally, they're brilliant, and they stay brilliant in their color even when they dry. So there we have several different variations, and I have one more to show you, which is really fun. I was doing this one and I forgot to do my petals, and I started auraing, and yet this makes for another beautiful look with that same concept, just with no petal, but we just aured in each of those triangular shapes, keeping the arc, right? And then shading around as if it were a little pillow, basically. And here's another idea, just a little dot in the center, or you can fill in the centers dark. And I have one more to show you that is actually a pattern that I use in my business, Zentangle.net. We make earrings and other lasered wood products. And one of the things that I make is with this pattern. It's well as well, but the aura lines are a little bit different. As you can see, there is almost like a midrib here without having the actual line. We're just changing the direction of the aura. And in here, I like to fill in these with the dark circles because then you can really see the pattern. And this is what came out of it. Here's a pair of earrings that we sell. These are pretty large. And my daughter, she puts the earrings together. She does a great job. And she paints these beautiful metallic paints on them. There's the gold one. And then we do a smaller version, which is silver. And then we also do just a plain natural same pattern on a coaster. So I am really in love with well, as you can tell. And I hope you have a lot of fun practicing and discovering your own variations of what you can do within all of these negative spaces. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for today's Tangle. Thanks for joining me. If you like these lunchtime tutorials, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I also invite you to check out my website for classes that I've scheduled or to purchase my Tangle tags for your favorite step-outs. Our website is botangle.net. I'm also leaving you with some other links. Zentangle.com is where you can learn more about the Zentangle method from its founders, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas. And you can also visit their store for a multitude of Zentangle paper tiles, tools, books, kits, subscribe to their newsletter, and get some other really valuable resources. Tanglepatterns.com is that site I talk about where you can explore hundreds of tangle patterns, read about them, and get the step out, which is basically the deconstruction of the pattern so that you can recreate it on your own. And finally, if you'd like to share your session results with me and my student community, please join Annie's Botangle Alumni Facebook page. This is a private group where we inspire each other with our work and offer tips and useful information about art and Zentangle.